Hey guys, I'm here today with another book haul for you. It's been a little while since I filmed one of these and I have so many books to show you, so let's just get right into it. So first off, I'm going to show you guys some of the books I received as gifts over the holidays and also some books that I purchased for myself. So the first one is The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. This is an adult kind of fantasy story about a family of witches. It's the prequel to the novel Practical Magic, which she released a long time ago. I don't know, I've seen the movie in the 90s and I really enjoyed it. And this is kind of the story of the characters in that book when they were children and growing up until the point that Practical Magic starts. I have never read Practical Magic, but I really enjoyed this one. You don't have to read the other book to pick this one up. And the writing was just beautiful. So highly recommend it if you like stories about witches or family, or you just like whimsical writing, because it's really good. And I also picked up a copy of One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. I found this at a used bookstore. I've seen this cover everywhere, and I think it's been on the New York Times bestseller list for like almost the entire year. So when I saw it for cheap, I decided to pick it up and read it on vacation. It is a thriller, a YA thriller about a group of kids who are all in detention together, and then one of them dies in detention, and it's just kind of, it follows the case trying to figure out what happened to this student and who committed the murder. I think of this almost as like a tabloid in a YA novel. Like, it's full of gossip and tropes and unlikable characters, but it was very entertaining. So I had a good time reading it. If you like thrillers, you might want to pick it up. And I also had to pick up a finished copy of The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. As you guys know, I'm obsessed with this book. I want to get every edition that's out there, so I went on release date and picked it up. And yeah, I just can't say enough about this story about fairies. Even if you've never read a fairy book before, I highly recommend this one. It's dark and intriguing. It's full of a whole bunch of really morally gray, awesome characters that you can't decide if you love or hate them, and I just found it to be like intoxicating, to be honest. I can't stop thinking about it. So. And I also picked up a finished copy of Gunslinger Girl by Lindsay. This is another book that I absolutely loved when I read it as an ARC earlier, like last year. And it's essentially like a dystopian western. It's just badass, to be honest. It's about a girl who grows up in this commune, and one day she needs to escape because her father wants to put her in an arranged marriage with someone who's horrible. And so her and her best friend escape and try and reach a city that's kind of like known as a city of sin, almost like an old school Vegas. And it's just about their adventure going there. I will say that this book was unlike what I was expecting, in a good way. It like features circuses and stuff a lot, which I wasn't anticipating. So if you like circus stories, actually give this one a go. And then for Christmas, I received a copy of A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline. This was sent to me by my sales rep at Macmillan as a gift. And I've never read the story. This is actually a bind up of 3 different books. A Wrinkle in Time, A Wind in the Door, and A Swiftly Tilting Planet. And I wasn't like going to pick this book up on my own, but with the movie coming out and I received a copy, I might give it a read. So we'll see what all the hype is about. And then I also bought the November Bookish box, which is a subscription box my friend runs, and inside it I got a copy of Bad Girls with Perfect Faces by Lynn Weingarten. And I actually know nothing about this book other than it's a thriller. It kind of sounds like it's just like gossipy fun, to be honest. So when I'm in the mood for a thriller, I'll probably pick this one up. And then for Christmas, Corey got me a copy of All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Kiely. This was one of her favorite books of the year, and I've been wanting to read more Jason Reynolds, so I'm super appreciative that she bought it for me, and I just can't wait to read it. It's a story inspired by like Black Lives Matter and racism in America, and it just sounds like a really important read, and I'm looking forward to giving it a go. And then also for Christmas, Sally got me Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, and it is a nonfiction book about instructions on writing and life. And Sally thought that I would just find it kind of inspiring. I'm always looking for nonfiction books just to kind of expand my mind and just my way of thinking, so I'm excited to dive into this one. And then Crystal bought me Wonders of the Invisible World by Christopher Barzak, which is actually a book that I remember having in mind to pick up like 2 or 3 years ago, and then I kind of just forgot about it, and it's not very like hyped around our bookish community, but Crystal just kind of, she picked it up herself and really enjoyed it, and then that kind of triggered my memory of it, and she bought it for me, and I'm so excited to read it. It just sounds like, I think it's like a magical realism novel about a boy in a small town, and one day his best friend moves back to town, and things kind of just take off from there. It's like Aiden begins to see clearly for the first time not only feelings that go beyond mere friendship, but a world that is haunted by the stories of his past. And that just sounds right up my alley. I have a feeling I'm gonna love this book, and it'll probably be a new favorite of mine, so I can't wait to read it. For Christmas, I always ask my family to buy me like special Harry Potter books, because I never buy them for myself, so it's a good thing to put on my wish list, and my mom came through for me this year. She bought me the Hogwarts Library, which consists of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which looks like that. I just think these covers are really fun. It also has the Tales of Beetle the Bard, and it has Quidditch Through the Ages, which I've actually never read this one, so I'm quite excited to have a copy of it now, and I just think this is a really cute collection to have. And then she also got me Harry Potter The Creature Vault, which is just a gorgeous book that features on all of the different creatures in the movies and kind of how they were designed, the special effects and stuff. So I'm really excited to just sit down and flip through this. I think that these like vault books are just so beautiful. I have the Magical Places book as well. So yeah, really excited to have this. And then she also was lovely enough to get me the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them Illustrated Edition. So these just have really pretty illustrations of the creatures that Newt comes across. And again, I just can't wait to have some time to sit down and go through these books. I just think they're amazing. So thank you, Mom. So now I'm gonna go through some of the books that I received from publishers for review. This is not sponsored in any way. They just sent me these books for free. So let's just get into it because there's a lot. So first up are some books from Disney Hyperion. The first of which is Bad Call by Stephen Wallenfels, which I actually don't know anything about this, but this cover alone has me intrigued. So it sounds like this is a book about a group of friends who are playing poker, and one of the kind of stakes that comes up in this poker game is that they agree to go on a camping trip at one of the national parks, and things do not go as planned. It sounds like this is a bit of a thrilling like survival story out in the woods, and I'm quite curious about it, so let me know if you've heard anything about this one. They also sent me a copy of The Life and Death Parade by Eliza Wass, and it just says on the back here, 1 year ago, Kitty's boyfriend Nicky Bramley visited a psychic who told him he had no future. Now he's dead. And this just seems like a book all about psychics and mediums and the veil between life and death, which I quite like reading stories like that, so I might pick this one up. They also sent me a copy of This Is Not a Love Letter by Kim Purcell, and I am really interested in reading this one. It says, like, basically it's about a couple, Jesse and Chris, who've been together for a long time, and they have about a week before graduation and when they have to make all these big decisions in their life. And then Chris, the boy, vanishes. The police think he's run away. Jesse doesn't believe it. Chris is popular and good looking, about to head off to college on a full scholarship, and he disappears while running along a river, the same place where some boys from a rival high school beat him up just 3 weeks ago. Chris is one of the only black kids in this small town, and Jesse is terrified of what might have happened to him. So this just sounds like a very interesting kind of mystery novel, but it also handles like issues with racism, especially in small towns, and I'm just really curious about this one. It sounds really good to me. They also sent me a copy of Neanderthal Opens the Door to the Universe by Preston Norton. This is a title that Disney Hyperion are very excited about. It's about a boy named Cliff who is just a very large guy. He's 6'6" and 250 pounds, and he's bullied a lot at his school, especially by the quarterback Aaron. Aaron returns to school after a near-death experience where he says that he spoke to God, and Aaron also said that God told him that there's only one person who can help him with this quest, and that is Cliff, aka Neanderthal. It sounds like this is just going to be a pretty interesting story about unlikely friends going on this kind of quest together, and I'm pretty curious to read this one. And then the last book they sent me was #Murder Trending by Gretchen McNeil. And I'm just going to read the little bit on the back here because it sounds really interesting. It says, "Welcome to the near future where good and honest citizens can enjoy watching the executions of society's most infamous convicted felons, streaming live on the Postman app for the suburbanized prison island Alcatraz 2.0. And then it says, "When 18-year-old Dee wakes up in a haze lying on the ground of a dimly lit warehouse, she realizes she's about to be the next victim of the app. Knowing hardened criminals are getting a taste of their own medicine in this place is one thing, but Dee refuses to roll over and die for a heinous crime she didn't commit. Can Dee and her newly formed posse, the Death Row Breakfast Club, prove she's innocent before she ends up wrongfully murdered for the whole world to see? Or will the Postman's cast of executioners kill them off one by one?" So, I don't know. That sounds pretty intriguing. And next up are a couple of books sent to me by Penguin Random House, the first of which is Neverworld Wake by Marisha Pessl. You might recognize this author's name. She wrote Night Film, which was pretty popular here on BookTube over the past couple of years. And this is her first YA novel, I believe, so that's kind of interesting. So it says that back in the day, Beatrice and her 6 best friends were the cool kids that everybody kind of wanted to be, and then the shocking death of Jim changed everything, and Jim is one of their friends. And then 1 year after graduation, Beatrice is returning to Wincroft, the seaside estate where they spent so many nights sharing secrets, and plans to change the world, hoping she'll get to the bottom of the dark questions gnawing at her about Jim's death. So she's hanging out with this group of her old friends, trying to just talk about what happened to Jim, and then a mysterious man knocks on the door and tells them something very strange. He tells them that time has become stuck, and the only way to fix things is for them to make some really harsh decisions together. And it just says that Beatrice has one last shot at finding out some answers and at surviving. So this book just sounds very strange, but quite interesting. I didn't read Night Film. I really want to. It's on my TBR, but I'm looking forward to giving this one a go. They also sent me a copy of Undead Girl Gang by Lily Anderson, and I'm so obsessed with this cover. I just think it's amazing. And this is essentially like, it's a mix between like Mean Girls, kind of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, zombies, like it literally is about an undead girl gang, and I just think it sounds like it's going to be such a fun read, and I can't wait to get into it. And they also sent me a copy of My So-Called Bollywood Life by Nisha Sharma, and this is a story about an Indian American teen named Winnie who is obsessed with filmmaking, obsessed with Bollywood, and her whole life her parents and family have believed in this like prophecy about like who she's going to end up marrying and all of that kind of stuff. And this is kind of just about her story trying to figure out if that's true, if she wants to kind of rebel against this prophecy and find her own love. And I've actually read this one already and I really enjoyed it. I just thought it was really honest, and I loved the diversity within it, and I just think it's great. And this one comes out in May, so I highly recommend picking this one up. So next up, I have a big stack of books from HarperCollins. The first one I want to talk about is All of This Is True by Ligia de Pinaflor. Sorry if I said that wrong. This book was awesome. This is a story about 4 YA-obsessed teens who befriend their favorite novelist, and then it just says on the back, what happens next will shock you. It's like about this YA novelist who basically ends up taking these girls and putting them into her next book, and kind of what happens after that book is published and all of the ramifications it has on their lives. And it definitely keeps you on the edge of your seat. I've never read a book like this. The entire concept was just so meta and just so fun and interesting to read. So I highly recommend this one. I also received a copy of Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno, and I've also read this one already and really enjoyed it. It's kind of like just a slice of life story that takes place on this island that's kind of magical and a little bit out there. There's this family on this island where magic has been passed down through the different generations, and it's about a pair of sisters and just them dealing with their magic, dealing with the townspeople, and it's also about our main character falling in love with a girl for the first time. There's a lot of magical realism in this book, which I absolutely love, and I thought the writing was beautiful, so if you're into that kind of stuff, this is a really good one. They also sent me In Another Time by Carolyn Leach, which is a historical fiction novel. It takes place in 1942 in the Scottish Highlands, and our main character is working within the timber trade to help with the war effort, which I think is a pretty interesting concept. It sounds like it's just about this girl's experiences, you know, working in the timber and like logging industry, and the people that she meets, and it's like a romance, but obviously the war is also happening, so if you like historical fictions, this might be a good one to pick up. And they also sent a copy of A Flicker in the Clarity by Emmy McNamara. And this just sounds like a book about two best friends who were always inseparable. Their names were Evie and Emma. And then Evie like makes some sort of decision that has really bad consequences for Emma, and it kind of throws their friendship into disarray. And it just sounds like it's a book trying to figure out when is the right time to cut a friend out of your life, if a friendship is worth saving, and it sounds like it's going to be a pretty sad contemporary. But I like those kind of books, so I'm pretty excited to read it. And next up is A Light Too Bright by Samuel Miller. This is a story about a boy named Arthur, whose grandfather was the author of this very well-loved book that became an American classic, and his grandfather vanishes from his family home, and a week later he ends up dead. And this is the story about Arthur. Basically, Arthur goes to live with some other relatives, and there he discovers a map and a letter from his grandfather, and this kind of sends him on a train trip, trying to just kind of discover what happened in the week leading up to his grandfather's death, and to just learn more about his family. It says that it's a good book for fans of David Arnold and Jesse Andrews, who I enjoy both of those authors, so I think this is going to be a pretty good one for me. They also sent me a copy of Now You See Her by Lisa Layton and Laura Stropke, and this is a thriller about two girls who are on the same tennis team, but they don't really know each other that well, and they're very different. And Amelia's car breaks down on the side of the road, and a guy comes to try and help her fix her car, but then he decides to try and kidnap her, and she runs right into oncoming traffic, and Sophie hits her in her car. And then what happens is they end up switching bodies. So Amelia wakes up in Sophie's body, but Sophie is in Amelia's body in a coma. So it says, now Amelia needs to find a way to switch back into her own life, but before she can do that, she must retrace her steps to unravel the mystery of her accident, her attempted abduction, and how it's all tied to her family's secret past. So that sounds quite unique. They also sent me a copy of Mariam Sharma Hits the Road by Shiba Karam. I have read this book and I loved it. It is about three friends going on a road trip. And all of the shenanigans that they get into. The thing that I really enjoyed about this novel is that the main characters are Pakistani American, and just seeing mostly like the southern states through their eyes was very enlightening. It's a super funny book, quite mature, I'll warn you about that, but just absolutely hilarious. And then, you know, one page you'll be laughing and then the next you'll be crying as they deal with racists and things like that. And I just think it's a really important and great novel, and despite having some heavy topics, it's a super, super fun book. So this comes out in June, and I think it will make a perfect summer read. And I also received a copy of Wild Blue Wonder by Carly Sorosiak, and this just sounds like a very heartfelt contemporary novel about a girl who was in love with her best friend Dylan, and then some sort of accident happened, and I think Dylan didn't make it. And now it's the winter after that incident happened in the summer, and she's dealing with her grief. She feels like it's her fault. She feels like everyone in her town views her as a monster, and then a new boy moves to town and doesn't see her that way. And I think it's just a story about their friendship and maybe romance, and just her coming to grips with her grief. And I just think it sounds quite beautiful, so sounds like a good one. And I also got a copy of Heretics Anonymous by Katie Henry, and this book has a very interesting synopsis. It's about a boy who's an atheist being forced to go to a Catholic school, and there he befriends a couple other kind of outcasts within this school, and they form like a club. It sounds like something happens in their theology class, and Michael, the main character, encourages the group to go from a secret society to rebels intent on exposing the school's hypocrisy. I've heard really good things about this one. Normally, I don't think I would pick this book up just because I'm not one to really gravitate towards stories about religion that much, but I've heard really, really good things about this, so I am quite curious. And I also received a copy of The Last Best Story by Maggie Lerman. I don't know too much about this one. It sounds like it's just a pretty adorable romantic contemporary about two characters that work on a school paper together, which I just think sounds pretty cute. And the last book that HarperCollins sent me is Contagion by Erin Bowman. I'm quite curious. I've never read Erin Bowman's books, but she has like a series of Western YA novels that have really intrigued me for a long time. So this is a new genre for her, a sci-fi novel. It says, after receiving an urgent SOS from a work detail on a distant planet, a skeleton crew is dispatched to perform a standard search and rescue mission. But when the crew arrives, they find an abandoned site littered with rotten food, discarded weapons, and dead bodies. As they try to piece together who or what could have decimated an entire operation, they realize that some things are best left buried, and some monsters are only too ready to awaken. So, sounds pretty intense, scary sci-fi. So if you're into that, keep this one on your radar. And I also received a book from Annick Press that I'm really excited to read called Fire Song by Adam Garnett Jones. And I know that this is an Own Voices novel about an Indigenous boy who lives on a reservation in Canada. And it's just like a coming of age story about growing up there and about falling in love with another boy. So the diversity in this book sounds really great, and I'm just really excited to read this one. I haven't read enough books that take place in Canada, which is where I live, so I'm quite excited to pick this one up pretty soon here. And I also received a book from Macmillan called I'm Not Missing by Carrie Fountain, and this is a story about a girl whose best friend goes missing inexplicably. They have no idea where she went, and that's kind of all you have to go off of. It sounds like it's just a story about, like, if this is a friend worth saving, kind of coming to grips with growing up, and yeah, it just kind of sounds like a coming of age novel. Books about friendships and like how friendship can be really complicated always interest me, so I'll probably be picking this one up as well. And next up are a couple of books from Little Brown, the first of which is Finding Yvonne by Brandy Colbert. I have been wanting to read books by her for so long. I have her other book, Little and Lion, on my shelf, and I just haven't gotten to it yet, but I've heard fantastic things, so I'm quite excited to read this one. It's about a girl named Yvonne who is a violinist, and all that she really wants in life is to attend a conservatory after high school and just focus on her music. Her home life is really difficult. Her mother walked out on her when she was a child, and her relationship with her father is quite strained. And then one day she meets a street musician who's also a fellow violinist, and they really hit it off. He seems to kind of understand the struggles that she's going with. But then when she unexpectedly becomes pregnant, that throws everything into disarray with her life. And so this is the story about her trying to just figure out her next move, figure out what she wants to do with her future. And I just think it sounds like it's going to be a really kind of like heartfelt contemporary, which are my favorite. So I'm quite excited to read this one. And then they also sent me a copy of The Summer of Us by Cecilia Viness, and this just sounds like the perfect summer read. It's just about a group of friends on a road trip all around Europe and all of the crazy shenanigans they get into. And I honestly don't really need to know more than that. I love road trip books, I love friendship books, so this just sounds like it's gonna be my total cup of tea. And to end the video, I just have a couple of books from Simon & Schuster, the first of which is Letting Go of Gravity by Meg Leader. So this is a story about two twins, Charlie and Parker. Charlie had leukemia but is now in remission, and I think the story mostly takes place through Parker's point of view. It sounds like it's about her just dealing with her next steps after graduating and going to Harvard. And it just sounds like her relationship with Charlie has been kind of rocky ever since his diagnosis. And I think this is just like a story about not only family, but just kind of just growing up. It sounds like it deals with Parker maybe falling in love with her for the first time, and like allowing herself to let her brother go a little bit and let him live his own life and things like that. Yeah, so this one sounds like a good one, and I quite like the cover. And then finally, I saved my most exciting book for last. I became obsessed with the book Scythe by Neal Shusterman last year. It was one of my favorite books of the year. I mentioned it in my top 10 books of 2017 video, which I can link down below. And so I've been eagerly anticipating the sequel, which came out on January 9th. I went down to the bookstore that day, and sadly my bookstore did not have any copies left, so I was quite sad. But then, like just the other day, as a complete surprise, Simon & Schuster sent me a finished copy. I had no idea that it was coming, so I was very excited. I did a little dance around The Office. This one is called Thunderhead, and it is book 2 in the series. Scythe is essentially about a dystopian world where humans have kind of figured out how to master death. There's no more disease, there's no crime, there's no like violence, and life is like pretty good. But now they're dealing with issues of overpopulation. So to combat these issues, there are people called scythes, and these are the only people that get to decide who lives and who dies and how people die and when. And essentially when a scythe comes to visit you, like there's no getting away from it, it's your turn to die. Meanwhile, in this society, there's something called the Thunderhead, which is essentially like the cloud. Like it's this artificial intelligence that kind of just rules over the entire society and makes decisions for them, and everybody trusts in it and things like that. So I'm very curious to see why this book is called Thunderhead and how it plays a part in it, because it was very interesting in book 1. And if you haven't picked up Scythe yet, please do. I just feel like it's such a unique, thought-provoking world, and I just want everybody to read it. So I cannot wait to pick up the sequel. So those were just some of the books I received in the past couple of months. Let me know if any of those sounded really interesting to you guys, and also let me know what books you've picked up recently, because I would love to add some to my TBR. Thanks so much for watching, happy reading, and thanks for being awesome. Bye!